The Holy Gospel according to John. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now, Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can any good thing come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no guile, no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "Where did you get to know me?" Jesus answered, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." The Gospel of the Lord. Well, this is one of my favorite character callings. There are some callings that are wonderful and magnificent, and I'll make you fishers of people. But Philip, one who had already been called by Jesus, he went and got Nathanael. Philip becomes one of the very first evangelists then, carrying the gospel of Jesus, and he goes and he calls Nathanael, a friend of his. "Hey, you got to come and see this guy. This is the one that Moses talked about and the prophets talked about." "Who is he?" "It's Jesus from Nazareth." Wow. Can any good thing come out of Nazareth? What was behind all that? Was Nathanael being especially critical? Was he being prejudiced in some way? It's nothing that sinister. It's nothing that deep. It really is referring to certain rivalries that cities had with each other. You could look at any high school football team, and there is one team from another city or another school, at least, that will be their rivals. I grew up in Florida, and we would have said, "Can any good thing come out of Georgia?" Did we mean there was nothing good in Georgia? Of course not. That was just the rivalry between the states, the rivalry between different communities. So Nathanael is showing himself, and he's going, "Oh, okay." Being from Bethsaida, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Philip says, "Come and see. Come see for yourself. Come see if what I'm not telling you is true." I love this story so much because Jesus sees Nathanael coming, sees him from a distance, and he goes, "Oh, here is an Israelite truly in whom there is no deception. There's no deceit." Now, sometimes we read the translations as saying something like, "Here is a true Israelite in whom there is no guile, in whom there is no deception." Or some translations will say, "Here is a true Jew in whom there is no deception." That truly isn't modifying Jew or Israelite, it's modifying no deception. There is truly no deception in him. And Nathanael goes, "How do you know me? Where did you get to know me?" Jesus said, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip even called you." What does that mean? Well, they don't say anything in the scripture without it meaning something. I saw you under the fig tree. In first century Judea, that was where they would pray. During the heat of the day, they would sit underneath, usually a fig tree because it gives good shade, sit under a fig tree, and that's where they would pour out their heart to God. Not necessarily going into the temple because there was only one temple, and that was in Jerusalem. Not going into a synagogue. The shrine sites were all gone, except for the Greek and Roman ones. So where did they pray? They prayed underneath the fig tree, poured out their heart. So what Jesus is saying is, I heard what you were praying. And that's why Nathanael's response is, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. If you heard my prayers, if you heard me pour out my heart, if you can judge me as having no deceit in me, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Jesus said, basically, you think that was good? Wait till you see the angels of heaven ascending and descending upon me. Wait till you see that. Well, Nathanael's hooked. Nathanael becomes such a great evangelist. So here's the great story of Nathanael's calling. Here's the story of Jesus saying, I knew you before you walked up here, before you even came up here. I knew who you were. I know all about you, Nathanael. And so Nathanael pours out his heart to Jesus. What happens afterwards? Well, we know that Nathanael is mentioned of being in the boat when the boat was cast about on the Sea of Galilee. But we don't see him mentioned in the other Gospels. Or do we? Well, we know that in John's Gospel, he's referred to as Nathanael. But in the Synoptic Gospels, he's referred to as Bartholomew. That's why some people say that, and they mistakenly say, that there's two different sets of disciples, because over here there's Jude and there's Nathanael, and over here Jude and Nathanael aren't there, but there's Thaddeus and there's Bartholomew. It's the same people. Bartholomew isn't a first name. Bartholomew it means the son of Ptolemy. And Thaddeus was the surname of Jude. Okay. It was finally Elias of Damascus who identified Nathanael and Bartholomew as the same person. As the Gospels had been collected together and they were starting to see, wait a minute, they're not telling different stories, but they're different details. Well, Elias of Damascus said, but they're not contradictory. They're just calling them different names. That's what happens in the scriptures. That's what happens in the gospel accounts that we read. But what happens after the events of the Acts of the Apostles? What becomes of Nathanael Bartholomew? Well, we know that he goes up into Armenia. In fact, the Armenian church, they claim Nathanael as their founder. And it's certain that he spent a good deal of time there in Armenia. Most of these national churches will look towards certain figures as their founder, after Jesus, of course. The Roman Catholic Church looks to St. Peter. The Ethiopian Church looks to Matthew. There are others like that. So Armenia now claims Nathanael Bartholomew as their founder. We know that Nathanael spent some time in Hierapolis, which is in Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, with his pal Philip, the one who had called him. Philip had gone to Hierapolis, and he had established church work there, and his Philip's four daughters, were actually there with him. In fact, Nathanael is probably there with Philip at the time Philip is arrested. And yet, Nathanael escapes. We know that one of the daughters of Philip, who was called a prophet, that she kept contact with Nathanael after their separation. Well, where did Nathanael go? We know that he went to India. Thomas was already there, but Nathanael had traveled on that same road, went there to India, and in India they found an Aramaic copy of the Gospel according to Matthew. Now, the Gospel of Matthew that we have now was originally written in Greek. We know that it's not a translation from the Aramaic. So what we have been able to conclude from that is that Matthew wrote two Gospels. He wrote one originally in Aramaic, and he wrote another original in Greek. They match up very well, but with some differences, certain details that someday we may talk about. So this Aramaic Gospel of Matthew was believed to be taken there by Nathanael himself. Well, that would mean it was pretty late, him getting there, because the gospel wasn't written for quite some time. But we also think that this Aramaic gospel was written before the Greek one was. Anyway, so Nathanael carries this gospel to India and leaves it with the community there. From India, Nathanael returns to Persia, which is modern day Iran, and he founded many churches there. From Persia, he goes to Arabia for a short time, and then finally, he goes back to Armenia again. In Armenia, Nathanael is said to have healed the king's daughter. While the king and the royal family were worshiping some kind of an idol, some kind of a dragon idol, I think they said, or a huge lizard or whatever. And the priests of this of the king's cult have not been able to heal the daughter. So Nathanael comes, according to Eusebius of Caesarea in his book called History of the Church, pardon me, that Nathanael goes before this statue and he commands a demon inhabiting that statue to come out. According to Eusebius, that spirit took shape and it came out as this giant snake, rolled over and died. And they said that the stench of the snake actually caused some of the priests of this cult to collapse. Not Nathanael. He stands there and then he heals the king's daughter, having banished that demon then. Well, the king and his family are pretty impressed by all this, and they decide, we want what you've got. You tell us about this. So Nathanael then preaches, baptizes the king, baptizes the royal family, many of the nobles there. But of course, the priests of that cult were not happy about this. And they conspired with the king's brother to arrest Nathanael. For Nathanael. We know that Simon Peter was crucified. We know that Andrew, his brother, will be crucified on an X-shaped cross. We know of so many horrible things. But maybe Nathanael's fate was the cruelest of all. Nathanael was arrested. First, they beat him with clubs, broke many bones. And then, and I'm not telling you this just for the sake of shock or gore, but I always want us to remember that we owe a debt to those who have gone before us. After being beaten with clubs, then Nathanael was actually skinned alive. Gruesome. And yet, he continued to preach the gospel to those who were tormenting him. He's still alive, he's still preaching, and they decide to then crucify him as well. They said he was crucified head downward. And up until the moment he dies, he continues to pray for his tormentors, and he continues to preach the gospel. And it has an effect. People aren't unmoved. They're stunned by this man who has undergone this horrible torment, still praying for them in love and sharing the gospel with them. Armenia became a stronghold of the church all through the Middle Ages, even into today. There was always a strong church presence there. When he died, it was somewhere around the year 70. He died in the city of Albana, also called Albanopolis, which in today's geography is the modern day city of Durban. In whom there was no deceit. And this guy spoke the truth wherever he went. And he left in his wake so many churches, so many converts, royal families converted. And he suffered the ultimate penalty and never complained about it. He said, I will not waste my time with tears when I can be telling the story of the Savior. Let's not waste our time complaining about our lot in life. Let's not waste our time complaining about the way we've been treated. Let's spend our time glorifying God like Nathanael did, glorifying God and telling the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thanks be to God.